so that they don't, so they can actually appreciate the tool for what it is, right? So what are we going to talk about today? TM1 concepts, the TM1 ribbon in Excel. We're going to be primarily working in the cube viewer as well as the perspectives, which is an Excel added. Server Explorer, the applications folder, slices, snapshots, and active forms. Slices, snapshots, and active forms are all ways of reporting the data in Excel. When you're in a slice, basically you're connected directly to the TM1 database. Snapshots are basically literally that. They're just there's no formulas in there. It's basically, just once you snap it, you're done. Active forms are very high level, and we're not going to be going into that at this point, but I'll show you some active forms that we've developed over time. Just quick about me. I've been doing this for 30 years. Certified as an Excel expert as well as a Congress TM1 developer. I specialize in Excel-based solutions. I primarily focus on budgeting, forecasting, and planning, which unfortunately hasn't been happening at MCOR for the last couple of years. Analysis and reporting. Prior to that, 10 years, I was a controller, accounting manager, etc. So I am an accountant. I'm an agreed accountant. And there you go. Also, if you guys have any questions about anything, just ask. All right, so let's just get started. Let's talk about dimensions. Everything on. Okay, and of course, elements, cubes, subsets, and views. So, what's a dimension? A dimension, are basically the fundamental building blocks of TM1, of the actual cubes themselves. You can consider what we call elements that define the data that's stored in the cubes. Now, those dimensions, they do not contain data. They're basically the structure. So right here, this is just a snapshot of the balance of if I look at TM1 surface, there are multiple cubes. We're going to go over this in depth later. But if you look at the balance sheet, let me go back. If you go back, you look at the balance sheet here. It's made up of several dimensions. Those dimensions would be scenario, year, division, account BS, which stands for account balance sheet, as well as month BS, which stands for month balance sheet. The accounts for the balance sheet and the months for the balance sheet are very different than the accounts and the months for the P&L. We're going to be focusing today, because everybody here is finance, we're pretty much going to be looking at the P&L cube, the balance sheet cube, and we may pop in and out of the trial balance.
Hey, Solana, this is a meta question here. So when I read the definition of dimensions, are the fundamental building blocks of TM1 cubes, I'm kind of on the same spot. I don't know, I don't have a clue what TM1 cubes are. Can you explain it more into non-IT nerdy language? What is a TM1 cube?
A cube is a database. It's a multi-dimensional database. I'm actually going to go through and define that in a little bit. Right now, I'm just starting, building up, going from the bottom to the top. So, for example, dimensions would be considered, let's say with dimensions till we get to the cube itself. But again, a cube, you see cubes here, and we drill down on cubes. This is just a sample listing of what's out there. We have a balance sheet cube. A balance sheet, the balance sheet cube basically is a database. It contains all the data for the balance sheet, but it's not a relational database. So, for example, if you're working in Sightline and you grab data from Sightline, that is what's considered a relational database. It's two-dimensional, okay? Where TM1 is multi-dimensional, right? So again, if you look at the balance sheet, so these dimensions, scenario, year, division, account balance sheet, or account BS and month BS, right? These are actually, it's considered metadata. If you've ever heard the IT term metadata, right? So now let's talk a little about the elements, which which are the components of a dimension. Right? So the month dimension would have in it October, November, and December. Those are what's called elements. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
I assume that's the, okay, cool. Okay, so now elements that have no children are called base level elements. Okay? Elements that have at least one child are called consolidated elements. So for example, October, November, and December, the parent for October, November, and December, one of the parents could be Q1. Okay? Q1 is a consolidated element. So there are three types of elements in a dimension. N, which is considered the lowest level element, okay, which defines the intersection of the data points as numeric values. The N stands for numeric. C, a calculated value or roll-up of N and other C-level elements. Okay, C stands for consolidated. S, which I've used throughout, let's say, the MCore environment. These are what are called string elements. You guys don't really use them. I mean, you're not going to be using them as a user, but I use them in many different ways. So let's do this. Let me go back here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and get out to. So I'm just gonna go and log in. I'll go through this in detail in a little bit too, but just let me go log in TM1 for you. Maybe this will help Romero understand what a cube is, and then also the dimensions and elements.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just drop down into cubes. You guys, when you log in, you're not going to see all these. There's a lot of obsolete cubes out here that are no longer being used, but I'm the administrator, so I can see everything. When you guys log in, you will not see all these, right? However, you will see the balance sheet, okay? So the balance sheet is a TM1 cube. It stores data, okay? So now if I go into the balance sheet, I'm just going to double click. This is what's called a cube viewer. We're going to go into this as well, into more detail later. But if I drill down on the balance sheet, I have dimensions, views, and these are rules, okay? You guys don't need to pay much attention to rules. That's more for an administrator, but you can see that there are rules applied to the balance sheet. Now, if I go into dimensions, like I showed you on that PowerPoint, let's say I go into month BS, okay? And I double click on it. It opens up what's called a subset editor. Again, I'm going to go into more detail with this. So we were talking about N-level elements. N-level elements in this case would be beginning balance, next change October, November, December, January. Okay, those are the base level elements. Anything you see in blue, I know it's hard for you guys to see, but underneath here, there's like a little pound sign or a little hash mark. Okay, that tells you it's an N-level element. Okay. So now, N-level elements may have parents or C-level elements. So if I was up here on October, and I drill down on October, what is October made of? It's made of the beginning balance, as well as the net change for October. From an accounting perspective, everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Right. So now if I go to November, that's made of, notice, it's still done on October, and you see beginning balance, and now you see net change October. That's what makes up October. But now if I drill down on November, notice it has two children that make up November. October, which is also a consolidated element, as well as net change November. If I go to December, you're going to see November, net change December, etc. So let's say I drill down on the November. that's beginning balance and exchange October. If I drill down on November, you guys see that as far as a hierarchy is concerned?
So which one is the year-to-date value? Or there's no year-to-date here, there's only net change?
Okay, so because when you're dealing with your balance sheet, if you wanted to see the latest and greatest, you'd be going to September, right? Because September is gonna have, where we just finished September, so if you want to look at a year-to-date, and again, we're talking balance sheet, we're not talking P&L. If we go to P&L, yes, you will have a year-to-date. But if we're talking about the balance sheet, certainly September would have the latest and greatest through the whole fiscal year, as far as values.
Balance sheet, so for me, year-to-date is a whole historical ending balance.
Correct, all the historical data will now be in September. But if you just want to go through August, then you can go August, July, etc.
Okay.
Okay, so now, it's kind of crazy that it has some of these year-to-dates in it, but let's say I go to year-to-date sub. Okay, all year-to-date sub is, is gonna have net change October through September. It's not gonna include the beginning balance, which is critical for your balance sheet, because you have to have that opening balance, right? Now, these down here, net change Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, those would have been used for forecasting. Anytime you see the word input, that would need to be for forecasting or planning. So for FY24, there was no budget, no plan, no forecast, and these would not have been utilized, but they are part of the roll-up to YTD September.
By any chance, do they exist by month, or it's only by quarter?
Because it's not by month as far as an input for the balance sheet. Certainly we did balance, we did budget and plan at the month level, but we never really did a whole lot of budgeting at the balance sheet level. So these would have been high level entries, and they probably would have done at a quarterly level, which is pretty much how headquarters always done their world. It's more of a, they're big on their quarters, not big on their months.
Could that be changed in the future?
You can do whatever you want in the future, but certainly the balance sheet was never something that was budgeted in detail, ever, at M4. It would have been high level entries that would have been put in there. Okay? So for the P&L, absolutely. The P&L was definitely, we did all our planning at the month level. And you'll see that when I actually go into, see this is the monthly estimation. Okay, so it might make it more clear. Let's say I go down to P&L real quick here. And I go into the month dimension. Do the same exercise. Right now you just see total year and a bunch of months. Again, we're going to get into more detail with this, but this is what's called the default subset. Okay? But if I hit this button here, which is the all button, it's going to bring out every element, whether it's an N or a C, so you can see what's actually out here. Okay? So certainly I have my months, and I'm just going to go grab my months for now. We'll go into this a little bit. See, here's my months, right? Now, there were things that we used Q1's forecast, but again, this is going into application design. It's not really basic user training, and I can explain that, but it is an N-level element. But so, for example, let's say that I pick March. Just say I just want to see March, and I want to see where does it roll up. What are the parents for March? Okay, this roll up button will tell me. So March rolls up to Q2, which makes sense, but it also rolls up to all these year-to-dates, starting with March, as well as quarter-to-date. QTD March is January, February, March, which is the same as Q2, but then you have year-to-date March, which is going to basically start with October, November, December, January, February, March. The order doesn't matter. Yeah, I can clean that up, but you get the idea as far as how things roll up within the dimension itself. Does that help at all, Amaro?
Yep.
So, let's go back to PowerPoint presentation, and let's go back to where we were. All right, so that's just gives you a quick idea of what a dimension is. Now, elements, like I said, October, November, December, we went through the 3 types of elements. I didn't show you an S-level element yet. There may be an opportunity later to actually show you an S-level. But you guys, for your purposes, all you care about are the N-level, which again are the base level elements. The data is actually stored at that N-level element. Okay, I'm going to go into a little techie stuff with you on how data is actually stored in the queue. But just remember that data is only stored at the base level. It is not stored at the C level. Okay? C1 is what we call, it's very, it uses memory. So everything that would be sitting at the C level is calculated and only stored there at that moment. And what that does is it shrinks the size of the cubes themselves. All the ODBC queries that you guys do coming out of SQL, all those large spreadsheets that you do, that same information is sitting in TM1, and it's going to be 1/100th the size as far as storage. Okay, that's another reason why people, certainly many years ago, would use a tool like TM1 instead of pivot tables. And so, okay. Now, data.
Let me ask you a quick question. So, like this piece of running query, well, I call them queries, but whatever data points, reports, I think I'm getting a little by little better to run them. But my question here would be like, are you gonna run through any troubleshooting on these slides of, what happens when a balance is not balanced, or how does the data from Sightline gets loaded into TM1? Probably a little bit more of the in behind the weeds stuff. Are we gonna go through something like that, or are you gonna look at that?
No, that's something users would never need to know how to do. Right now, for this, again, this is basic T1 concepts. This is basically for the users to understand how to actually find information within TM1.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, certainly, TI processes that are run to load the data out of Sightline is a major part of what I do. Okay, and that's critical to basically this environment working.
So, Lakeisha, is that something that you're familiarized? How to, go through all those troubleshoots, or are you gonna be training Lakeisha in this case on all that?
Well, we can have that conversation offline, but as I've mentioned to both Eamon and Tom, I'm going to be doing a review with her. She gets 2 half-day review sessions with me, but it's not training. I'm not going to teach her how to use TM1. The expectations were that she already knew how to do that, but let's take that offline at this point, okay? So if I look at data points, this is critical, all right? So I'm in a spreadsheet right now. Okay, a data point is a cell. So let's say I'm on this hold on a second, sorry about that. Let me get rid of that. By definition, like I was talking about Sightline, a spreadsheet is 2-dimensional. You have rows and you have columns. Okay, so the intersection of a row and a column, okay, is what you would assume would be that $3,114,000, right? But in TM1, it's multi-dimensional. So I'm using more than just, let's say, October and revenue to come up with that number of $3,114,000. Okay? So in a multi-dimensional database, a data point is the intersection of single elements from each dimension of the cube. All right? You're probably going, whoa, I don't understand. What are you saying, Solana? Okay. Right? So keep that in mind right now that you're looking at October, like that number, that $3,114,000. What is that? It's revenue, total revenue for October for the actual scenario for the fiscal year 24 for the total consolidated division, in other words, the top of the house, as well as all the departments, is what's going to give you that $3,114,000. Okay, that's literally the data point to get to that value. Right? So here's an example of a six-dimensional model. Right? So in this case, what I'm looking at is actual Alhambra, which is division 1005, it's site line 8 for anybody who cares. Department is none. Now, for Lakeisha, I will at least give you some tips and tricks here. At MCOR, if the department is none, you're basically talking about COGS, revenue and COGS.
Okay.
Right? You would never use a department none for any other accounts. It will always be for revenue and COGS.
Okay.
Right? It's critical because that's the way the data is stored in Sightline. Okay. So in this case, if I look at actual 1005 being the division, department being none, the account being 40,000, that is the product sales GL account, month of October. FY24, the value is 60,532. Right? So let's see if I can remember that. October, FY24 Alhambra product sales. Okay, so let's see if I can go in that. Back to my cube. And in this case, I'm going to go into the P&L cube real quick, just let's see if I can find that, okay? I know I'm looking at October. I know I'm looking at revenue, okay? But I'm looking at revenue for 3,114,000, like that first slide that I showed you. But remember, I'm looking for Alhambra. So if I drill down, we're going to play with a lot of this stuff in a little bit, and let's say I just go to 1005 Alhambra, okay? That's my number. Right? That's the 62,144.83. That's the intersection of each one of these elements from each one of these dimensions. So again, it's a six-dimension cube. See here where I say P&L dimensions? If you go to the right, we'll go into this again in more detail. You'll see that there's 6 dimensions: scenario, year, division, department, account, and month. So the intersection of every one of the elements, which would be revenue, October, total departments, Alhambra, FY24 actual, will give me the value of 62,144.83. Wow. That's interesting. Oh, because I was looking at 40,000 sales. Okay. Now, remember I just showed you 62,000, right? That's because I was showing you all revenue. Okay? So I got caught out there. Let's go back to what I was showing you. If I drill down on revenue, which makes up multiple GL accounts, we'll go into this too. See my trade revenue? There's my 60,000, and if I drill down on trade revenue, you'll see 40,000, which is the GL account for sales, 60,532. So, you're ahead of me, Homero. What is a cube? Okay, a cube is a database, and in TM1, it is defined as a combination of dimensions, which what I was just showing you. Okay, in that P&L cube, those 6 dimensions, put them all together, you now created a cube that we call P&L. Right? So remember, cubes store data, not the data structure. In other words, dimensions just define the data structure, or what is called metadata. I mentioned this earlier, TM1 stores non-zero N-level elements and S-level element data points only. It does not store C-level elements, right? So if we looked at Q1, which is made up of October, November, and December, Q1, there's no data storage against Q1. Okay, TM1 is memory specific. So what it does in the back is it adds up what's in October, November, and December, and almost puts a virtual amount into that C-level element called Q1. Right? Now, when you guys are working with the cubes, you probably don't really care about that much. It's not that big a deal to you, but it's important to understand that the data is not stored against those C-level elements. It's only at the base level elements is where the data is actually stored. So, based on what I said, TM1 uses a patented indexing algorithm that makes the cubes very small and fast. Multi-cube technology. You can have as many cubes as you need. When I go in there, you're going to go, wow, what are all those cubes? Again, a lot of them are obsolete now. You guys will basically have a list of kind of what's still out there and active, right? That's through security, defining user groups, etc.
Solana question.
Sure.
If there are a lot of cubes out there that we don't use, is there a way that we can kind of archive them, or is there a way that we know which ones are not used anymore?
I could go through with Lakeisha and tell her which ones we're not using. It certainly wasn't my authority to remove anything. I wasn't just going to blow stuff away. And I don't know.
No, archive. Not blow it away, just archive it.
Yeah, you can archive it. That's fine. But you have to understand when you say the word archive, it's not like making a file. Okay, you have to understand when you say archive how you would save it off if you ever needed it for the future.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. But for example, when we originally bought Concord, and Concord was on JD Edwards, which was very nice because we had direct access into JD Edwards, so I could actually bring a lot of data coming out of JD Edwards at the time. And so Concord had its own cubes for revenue, bookings, backlog, etc., so that we could actually go into that original data and see how it was sitting in JD Edwards, besides then moving that data from those Concord cubes into our revenue, bookings, and backlog cubes. Okay? It basically gave you an audit trail on where all that information was coming from. Now,
do you still have access to that?
Oh yeah, it's all in there. Oh, I don't have access to JD Edwards anymore.
No, the JD Edwards. Do we have access to TM1?
Yeah, the cubes are in there. I'll show you later. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to maybe bring Sheila in. She has some questions as well. Okay, good. Continue. Sorry for the intrusion.
Okay, but those cubes have not been used since Concord went on to the sideline. Okay, which I think was during COVID, which was probably in 2020. Okay. So I have like 2019, maybe 2018.
Yeah, maybe we can just dust it off and see if it works. Okay. Thanks.
Well, the exact same data that would be in those Concord cubes would now be in our cubes. I'm capturing all the revenue data for Concord in our cubes. So I'm not quite sure what the purpose is, but for historical purposes, if she wanted to go back and see what was in JD Edwards, no problem.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now cubes can share data, perform calculations among each other, and communicate as needed. Certainly the P&L and the balance sheet, they're individual. They don't talk to anybody else. When I had created the sales forecasting application at MCore, there were multiple cubes that were all tied together in order to bring in the actual revenue forecasting. It's all there, just hasn't been done, So, it is an example of how cubes can share data, right? And of course, there are business rules that you can attach. A very simple rule would be unit times price, right? So, for example, let's say you had 10 units that cost, $10. The amount would equal 100. So the rule would be amount equals unit times price. And you would never, in other words, put in an amount, you would put in your units, your price, and then it would roll up to equal 100. All right, so let's maybe start playing a little bit. We're going to go over the TM1 ribbon, which contains 5 different groups. You have the standard, the active form, the data spread, the sandbox, and the developer. Okay, you guys in your life, you'll play with the standard. You may play a little bit with the active form. You won't play probably with any. It's the other two. We're primarily going to be working with the standard group. So when you connect to TM1, there's 2 ways to do it. You can either use the connect button or the explore buttons. They're very different, but you get to the end result of connecting to TM1. Okay? I've been using the explore button pretty much my whole career. Some of the people at MCore have liked the connect button because they don't want to play with server explosion. Right? So let's do this. And I want you guys to maybe do the same, but watch me first. I'm going to literally exit out of here real quick. Let's just get out. Right? So hopefully you guys have already logged into your remote desktop, CALH-SUT12, and you're actually in TM1 perspectives. Right? Now, once you get into TM1 perspectives, you go on, you would literally go to the TM1 ribbon here, and you can see here's the standard ribbon, here's the active form ribbon, here's the data. Let me get this out of the way. You guys probably can't even see that, but it's the presentation window that's obnoxious here. Come on. Get out of my face. All right, active form, there's the data spread, sandbox, and developer. We're primarily going to be working with the standard ribbon. So to connect to TM1, you can do it 2 ways. You can go to the connect button. Okay. What does the connect button do? Right? First of all, server ID. Right now, MCore only has 1 server, which is called TM1 Serve CA. The reason it's called TM1 Serve CA is many years ago, before my time, there were multiple servers. There was a TM1 Serve Corp, I think. There was a TM1 Serve NM, which stood for New Mexico, because MCore owns some companies in New Mexico. So that's why it's named TM1 Serve CA. INID. Just so you know, TM1 is not space or case sensitive. So even though my username is first initial S, first initial T, both in caps, that's how I've set my user up as S Tarragon. TM1 doesn't care. So you can just go lowercase, doesn't matter. Okay? So with passwords, there's no such thing as caps. You don't need character, any special characters. You don't need anything. All right, again, it's not space or case sensitive. So I'm just going to go in here and just put in my password and log in. So I'm connected. Yay. I'm just connected. That's great. Okay, so what am I going to do at this point, being connected? Maybe I have a report that's already been built that I could go into, and then that report will be available to me because that report will be connected to TM1. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the connect button because I like to work in Server Explorer, but I'm certainly not going to tell you guys how to log in, right? But I prefer Explorer. What happens now is it's actually going to bring up the Server Explorer, which we're going to go into in a lot of detail later. And you can see here's TM1. I'm going to drill down on TM1. There's my TM1 Serve CA. Double click on that. Go to username.
Solana. I click on TM1 Connect and it says cannot connect to TM1 admin server. Does that mean anything?
It probably means that your options have not been set up. I don't know what you're using, but
okay.
Here.
Does anybody else have the same problem, or?
I think it's you because nobody's configured you on that remote desktop. So here, go in here, real quick. I won't spend a lot of time with you, but
Options.
Go to options. You have MCore SAP05-gov in your Azure admin host.
I don't.
Okay, put that in there.
Okay, EMK. Oh gosh, this is. Say that again. I can't see it on the screen.
I know. EMK. Well, you guys defined it, not me. EMKR SAP 05-gov.
Okay. That's it. Just say okay then.
Yeah.
Save change. Okay.
Okay, drum roll.
Yep. Now it's a server ID and client ID and password.
Beautiful.
So TM1 and then client is the same training.
Your training, now I set you up as me as an example, just so you can see this, that this is a little past what we want to go through. Okay, we hardly have any users out here anymore. But if you went, you can see I have training with a capital T because I'm kind of being attentive. But you don't have to put the cap in there. And you can just type in lowercase training. And for the training users, you have access to the same user group as everybody else that would be on here, which would be the finance. Okay. All right, is everybody logged in?
I logged in and I got the Server Explorer up and running, and now it's thinking to get to work more.
Well, now that's a problem because when everything happened to M4 in March, we lost all of IT pretty much, and we were right in the process of basically migrating from TM1 to Planning Analytics. Damon, you're aware of that, right? So certainly Cafe, which is available, is not being used by anybody because there's nobody to do any of the installs, to do any of the testing. And because of that, all of you are still stuck in that remote desktop, which isn't on the government domain, and it's slow. It should not be slow. TM1 is the fastest thing available out there. Okay, and you'll notice I personally am not. I'm on a different domain, so everything I do is going to be very fast because I'm now part of the government domain with the remote desktop I'm using. But all the rest of you are still stuck in that other remote desktop, which I'm sorry about that, but we never.
What do we need? What do we need to do, Solana, to get away from that remote desktop?
Work with IT to install Cafe on all of your regular desktops, and then you won't have the problem anymore. You'll never have to use that remote desktop ever again.
And I mean, excuse my question, but is that it? Like when you say
That's
install, like putting a disk and saying like floppy disk and go like installed and run it and that's it? Like as easy as that?
It's not a floppy disk. I mean,
I'm hypothetically exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but
well, you'd have to work with payments team and get it up and running. But then again, I'm giving you perspectives training right now, which will you can still use it with Cafe to some degree if you understand the terminology that I'm giving you. But it's a different tool than perspectives. Okay, so at that point, you guys will have to start learning how to use Cafe. But the benefit of that is that it won't be slow. You don't have to go on remote desktop. You'll literally be able to go live directly from your desktop. You'll still have to connect to the VPN, but you'll be able to go live without having to ever go back into the remote desktop ever again in your life. But that's something I did explain a long time ago, and it just unfortunately it's never happened. But all right. Anyhow, let's go back to where we were here. The Connect and the Explore. All of you should now be in. All right, let's go back to my little PowerPoint presentation here. You can see those are the two options, Connect and Explore. Now, I've got you guys to log in. We're going to be working with that TM1 CA TM1 database. Each user will log in using their defined username and password. certainly, Lakeisha, once somebody tells me to, et cetera, I'll set you up as a real user. But right now, you can just log in as the training user.
Okay.
There really isn't going to be any difference with what you have access to, because once you're logged in, you will still be in that finance group, at least temporarily. And then at some point, let's say when I'm out of here, then we can, we'll give you admin rights at that point. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Now, the Server Explorer window, it displays TM1 objects, servers, applications, cubes, dimensions, views, subsets, etc. that would be available to you based on your security profile. Again, everybody that's on this call right now belongs in the finance group. It's kind of all that's left. I mean, back in the other, back when we had broadband and everything else, there were a lot of different user groups that had, certainly the sales guys, they couldn't see the P&L, they couldn't see the balance sheet, okay, but they could see all the stuff that they used to use, especially all the revenue, backlog, bookings, rev plan, all those cubes were available to them, right? Now, all these objects, it's a hierarchical list on the left pane. This is also important too, because if you're used to working certainly, with Microsoft's, File Explorer, aka Windows Explorer back in the old days, you could go right or left depending on what you wanted to do, right? And when you selected something. In TM1, the right side is really used for information purposes only. It's the left side that you need to do everything, okay? So you can see the right pane displays the properties for a selected object. In this case, you can't see it, but TM1 Serve CA has been highlighted. So over here, you'll see, where's the data directory? What's the network address? Who's the user that's logged in right now, right? To expand an object, you can click on the plus sign next to the object. Collapse it, click the minus sign. So, let's just go play around a little bit there right now. Right? So, again, TM1 Serve CA, notice the right side, the information. But if I go to applications, instead, just click on applications, notice the right side will now show me, what do I have sitting under applications? In this case, I have multiple virtual folders, one called Bookings, Billings, and Backlog, Finance, OTD, which stands for On-Time Delivery, PLM, Product Line Manager, Product Profitability, and Upload. If I go to Cubes, on the right side, it's going to show me all the cubes, and it's going to give me lots of information. Tell me how much memory is being used. I know none of you care about that, but it's kind of important, right, to see how much memory is being used by a lot of these cubes. Dimensions tells me, the other thing, it tells me how many elements are sitting in a dimension. That's kind of important. Stacy's still on the call, I can't tell, but there's a cube out there called AR Aging. It's a cube that was developed way before my time. I've been wanting to rebuild it forever. I warned her I was going to do it, just never happened. It was very poorly designed, to say the least. It's huge, and it really
I've never even tried to use it, to be honest, Solana.
I know. You do use it, but you only use it for one specific purpose.
For the reporting.
Right? Correct. You don't really drill in and look at anything in this thing. And it was, I mean, not to say anything about Paul, because Paul did some good stuff way back in the day, but I don't know where he was coming from when he designed this thing. All right. And so if you go out and you look at the dimensions, as we drill down on the dimensions, and let's say we go out there and I see in this AR invoice number, I got 60,283 invoices sitting in me. It's just, oh God, it hurts me. It hurts me so bad. But it is what it is. Anyhow, and that just gives you an idea. Now, you can right click on applications, okay? In my case, I can create one. I can create security assignments against them, etc. Okay? I can drill down on things. Now, this is really important. Let's just go through applications real quick before we get into the cubes and some of the other stuff. What's most important to you guys right now is going to be the finance folder and the upload folder. Okay. If we drill down on the, and then you see if I click on finance, it shows me everything that's sitting in the finance folder. Now, if I go drill down on that, and let's say I go into consolidating P&L and balance sheet, and you can see it's in that little Excel spreadsheet. Okay. If I double click on it, it's going to open up the consolidating P&L and balance sheet. Okay. There's just some little flags in here that know what month it is. It's all automatic. But what's important to know that everything that's sitting in any one of these folders, okay, that's an Excel spreadsheet, these are virtual spreadsheets. Okay? This is a virtual library of, let's say, canned reports that have been built, that are sitting out there. So let's say I open up consolidating P&L and balance sheet. And you guys can try it too. Double click on it, open it up, and go look at the file name. It's not going to say consolidated P&L and balance sheet. It's going to say something like T743X dot blah, 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 blah. It's like a temporary file. That's critical because you will never have access to the actual master. But if you wanted to save this off, you can do whatever you want with it. Break it, I could care less because you will never have access to the master. Okay? Does that make sense? You can see it's called TM1 227F. It's just a temporary name for this file. I could also go out, let's say I wanted to look at the department spend trend report. This is a report that Tom likes. Okay. And you can see it's basically a trend, but I think it's probably like the last 12 quarters. Okay. And what's nice about this is that TM1 will know what's the current month, what's the current quarter, etc., and build it. But again, this is just a temporary file. Okay. Now we're going to go to active forms, but this is the difference. In active form, you can see these plus signs. I can double click. I can drill down. Okay. You guys will be able to create as many slices as you want, hopefully by the end of this session. But none of you will be able to create an active form. And you're not ready for that. You won't be able to do that. So anything that's an active form is pretty much something I've built in the past. Okay. Any questions about that so far? Anything in regards to what's sitting out here? Now the other thing, upload. Certainly, Jason.
What if you run to an error or problem? You try to run one of these and get into some issues. How do we resolve that?
You'd have to tell me what error, what kind of issues you would have. Certainly, you shouldn't. I mean, if you're in the finance group, anything that's sitting under there should work just fine. Now, if something isn't working or you have a problem, then it's like, Solana, help, this isn't working. What's wrong? Okay. I think one of the biggest issues is somebody sees key error in a report. Oh my God, I have a key error. What could that be? Well, number one, it could be the Jack marked in. Number two, it could be that an element has changed and an element doesn't exist anymore. So it can't recognize that. But typically, things don't pretty much break. It's pretty clean, smooth running system. You don't really have a lot of issues. And certainly, over the years, Stacy could, verify on this. It's like, how many times do you come into problems, Stacy, with TMI?
I mean, probably a handful over the last 12 years.
Yeah. Good answer. Good answer. Good answer.
Anybody else? Come on, somebody back me up.
Yeah, no. This is it's pretty solid, Payman.
Knock on wood.
Well, it's solid right now. Let's go with that. All right. So now if we go to upload, we used to actually do a detailed ledger and expense report for people. Again, needed to be, rebuilt. It wasn't, but basically stopped using it. Nobody cared. Nobody cared about their expenses. And this would be, it was a project that would go out and be sent out to all the departmental managers, and they can see all their expenses, trend, budget, etc. And what happens in this upload folder, this is where you actually upload the data that goes into those cubes. So for example, one, I would think there's only a couple. Stacy uses upload AR aging. Okay. If you guys are no longer going to do the head count after this fiscal year, this one doesn't matter anymore because this is the HR head count actuals. You guys are not using the upload ledger detail anymore. But these two right here, upload P&L and balance sheet. This is the original one, this is SL8, and then upload P&L and balance sheet SL10. All right, so let's just go in and let's see what it looks like. It was created, this is again created before my time. I've cleaned it up, make it look a little nicer. But the whole purpose of this is for the users to feel comfortable to be able to load the data into TM1 without it being all IT-ish, I guess. So you can see data upload processing routine. This is going from SL10 into TM1, enter a month and date. Okay, these are at the last month of this fiscal year. Pick 9/30/24. And then in this case, you would just press this button, upload P&L and balance sheet. So let's go do it. All right, so the process completed successfully. Yay! That's a good thing, all right? So whatever's sitting in SL10 right now, at this moment, I just loaded into the P&L and the balance sheet cubes. Okay? I could go do the same thing for SLA, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, it's only the second of the month. It's not a big focus yet. By the 22nd of the month, that'll be important. But the second, not a big deal. And Lakeisha, basically Jason can do this. I'm sure. I mean, Homero can probably. A few different people can basically load this data, and of course you'll be able to do it when that time comes.
Okay.
I think you can do it now as finance, but I'm just telling you that once you have admin rights, you can do anything and everything you want. Right? So again, upload is important for you kids, and finance, consolidate P&L and balance sheet. Now I have what's called the BBB reconciliation. This is really for my purposes, and I make sure that the GL is tied to all the revenue and revenue cubes, bookings and stuff, all right? And then I tie also my revenue ship to cube, my bookings cube, my backlog cube, all sectors against all products. If something is out of whack, then I would get a red, right? Now in this case, there were some issues, tying out revenue, the GL, the first quarter, there was a lot going on because we had the whole disc offset, etc. And if you add up all three of these, notice it nets to 0, right? So I just highlighted them as yellow just to see, but they're, we're still tied up through the year. So right now, for the end of the year, for September, I'm out of balance by $2,877.50. That is, but it's important to realize this does not include Bud Lake data. Okay? Bud Lake is not part of this. It's a whole nother discussion, right? But for Tinley Park, for Concord, and what's left of Alhambra, as far as revenue, this is the GL, this is the revenue cubes, and I'm off by that amount. We actually do a revenue adjustment to then make this tie, and that's a manual process, and I'll have to show you how to do that. But we also need somebody in cost accounting to provide that number to us, okay? And Tracy's been doing it, and I don't know who's going to do it after Tracy. So that's a little off topic, but just giving you an idea what's going on with that. All right, another important issue that we look at in here, the other things that are important, the daily dashboard. This won't look great because we're only at the beginning of the first of the year. So it's gonna look kind of messy. Because we really don't have any revenue to date yet, and we don't have any, orders, you know, we have one order for Tinley Park so far. And then this certainly will go look at the backlog, et cetera, but for beginning of the quarter, this is accurate. This is our current backlog as of October 1st, including space and nav, okay? This is an FYI. That is the only thing that I have been able to get from Bud Lake